What we're going to do is we're going to go over the rates that we use, and we're going to go over the contracts that we use. I didn't realize all these pins were in here. Because you kind of know like how things are around here. So what we're going to talk about is what do you do when you get a new student, and what I mean by that is you're usually the way it's going to work is it's probably going to be somebody that contacted me, and then I forward you their information, usually by email.
Okay.
So usually what I'll do is I'll send you an email with the person's name and number and any information that I might have beyond that. But you also might have people contact you directly, which is a thing. Mm-hmm. Or maybe through another teacher here, they might give you some information for a student that didn't come through me. So what we're talking about is what happens at that point. So what you're going to do is you're going to call them on the phone, introduce yourself, talk to them, find out who you're teaching and how old they are, what kind of experience they have.
You got a pen. I handed it back to you.
And if you need me to slow down or if you have any questions along the way, you can ask me, okay?
And you're also recording it.
Yeah, well, I'm recording this so I can put it on YouTube. I'm going to make a training channel on YouTube just for our people so that people can go on there and look at this stuff, so it'll be on there. Mm-hmm. So you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing I always, and what we're talking about is private lessons right now.
Right.
And most of this stuff's straightforward. Do you have a copy of this? This is the rate sheet.
Right.
Yes, you do. Okay. Now, I don't publish these online for a few different reasons. One reason is I don't want people to use our rate sheet online as a basis for trying to determine the value of lessons here. What I mean by that is there are some people out there that they'll just price shop. Like that's what they're doing. Right. They'll call different places, just find out how much stuff is. Or they'll go to the website and find out how much stuff is. By not publishing it on the website, it forces them to contact us. So that's one thing I want. So them contacting us is our first opportunity to try to sell them on something. Mm-hmm. And then I don't publish the rates for a couple different reasons. One is I don't want people to look at our rates and use that as a basis for their decision to choose us or not choose us. I want them to actually talk to us and base it on that. We have something good going for us because we've been in business for such a long time now and we have a great reputation. It's because of that great reputation, if somebody does contact us, more often than not, they've already decided they're going to take lessons with us because we're a trusted brand. The teachers here are trusted teachers, and even you as a new guy teaching here, we're vouching for you. So that's in your corner, right, that we're doing that. And so people are, if they're contacting us, they already know they want to be here. So that's a good thing. Another reason why I don't publish it is when it comes to like similar businesses competing against one another and the type of petty stuff that sometimes happens with all that, I just try to stay away from it. So I don't talk to what might be perceived as our competitors. I just don't talk to them. Now I'm pretty friendly with Guitar Center. There's a new place opening up called Music and Arts, and I suspect I'll be friendly with them. But see, they're corporate. Like, I don't view them as competition, and they don't view us as competition. They don't hire the best teachers. And what I mean by that is they don't hire teachers that have been doing this for a really long time, that have their own curriculum set up, that have degrees. Like, they don't hire people like that. They hire people that they can pay a very little amount of money to provide what they would call similar services. Mm-hmm. We don't do that. Like, the people that work for us, they have extensive experience and or degrees and or a reputation already. Like, they know what they're doing. Like, it's kind of a big deal if you teach here. There's a couple other local music stores. I just don't even bother talking to them. I always try to make a policy out of just being friendly with everybody. I don't see any reason not to be friendly with people. But as soon as other stores start doing like some of this bickering kind of stuff that some businesses try to do, yeah, like lying about other companies and all this kind of stuff, like lack of integrity sort of things, I just don't participate. So they're like blocked on all of our social media. I don't talk to them. I don't associate with their students. Like, they can go do their thing, and if that's how they want to operate their life, they can do that. I'm not about that. Yeah. So I don't publish our rates because I don't want them looking at our rates and then trying to copy us in any sort of way. Mm-hmm. It just is drama, and I don't want that.
Makes sense.
Now, that said, another reason is by producing our rates on there where other people can see it, like other businesses, it gives them an idea of how we operate and how we structure things here, which is part of our success. We don't charge per lesson. Most places do charge per lesson. We don't do it that way. When you charge per lesson, you run into a lot of issues like people no-showing, people not paying. There's no guarantee of the clientele to be around for any period of time. There's generally not a contract. And every business might deviate a little bit from what I just described, but most are doing it that way. The way we do things is you are signing a contract, and you're signing for X number of months at whatever the rate is, and so we know and they know what everybody's paying for how long they're paying it. That makes things just easier on everybody. And when it comes to things like people not showing up, the money's going to be there. So like if you show up at 4 o'clock for your lesson with whoever it is, and they call you at the last minute, or maybe don't even call you, and they just don't show up.
That happens a lot.
It happens from time to time. And it's just a normal part of things. Sometimes people get stuck in traffic, sometimes people are sick, sometimes there's emergency. Sometimes when these things happen, they'll call you ahead of time and let you know, which is great. Sometimes they'll forget, or maybe they can't, whatever it is. But because they've paid in advance and they're under a contract, you're not going to lose money because they didn't show up.
Right.
And I'll talk about makeup policy stuff later. What I really want to tackle is this stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you have a new person, and let's say they're doing private lessons, which is most of what you're going to be doing, we always encourage them to do what we call a trial membership first. The trial membership is 4 half-hour lessons. Usually they're scheduled once a week for 4 consecutive weeks. And that's important because we want them to understand what the flow feels like of taking a lesson every week in a row. Sometimes other things come into play where maybe it doesn't work out that way, but that's usually what we try to do. And it's $90 for that. Now on our rate sheet, we say you're saving $50. So what that would mean is $140 is what the normal price would be, but we're charging you $90. And so some people might be like, well, how are you coming up with that? Well, because if you look at number one, if you individually pay for lessons, we're telling you it's $35 a lesson. So if you're paying for 4 lessons, then it's $140. But what we're doing is we're giving you a discount because we want you to get your foot in the door, and we don't charge our full rates anyway if you're under contract with us. We always discount it. It's a benefit they get for signing up with us.
Right.
So we're saying it's $90. And, it's reasonable. And even at $90, and you're going to be under the 50% thing. We're not going to do the probationary period thing, which says...
It's like 40, isn't it?
It's like 40%. We're just going to, with you and us, we're just going to go to 50% because you've been with us for like a year now. We know who you are. The probationary period is more for people that we don't know very well yet. So we're just going to do that. So even at $90, so you get half of that. That's $45 for 2 hours of your time. If you do the math, that's $22.50 when you're working per hour. Okay? So if you have one student, that's not a significant amount of income for you as a person trying to live. But when you have students stacked up in back-to-back lessons for however many days you're working or however many hours you choose to work, it is a good amount of money that you're making as an income. Okay, so that's the trial. And then the trial period serves 2 general purposes. One, I think, is kind of an obvious one. It gives the student and the family an opportunity to get to know you and to get to know us and decide if this is the place they want to be at. And it's okay if they decide that it's not, but usually they do decide us. I've never had somebody let me rephrase this. About 99% of people who do a trial continue. Generally, if they've called us up, they've already known that they want to do this and they want to try it out. Yeah. And our teachers are good teachers. Now, a good teacher to me is somebody that enables students to have fun and enjoy themselves, but also learn something. So if those 2 things are happening, then I think you're doing a good job. The details in between, I'm not as concerned about because that's where the customization comes into play. The way you teach one person's not going to be the same that you teach the other person. There might be similarities, but you're always going to kind of cater to the personality and the learning style of the student.
Right.
So the other part of the trial membership is you're also testing them out. You might decide at the end of the trial that you don't want to work with that family. Or you might decide that maybe they might be better off with a different teacher. So let's say you're teaching guitar and you're good at what you're good at, and then when the person's taking lessons with you, you might decide, you know what, this other teacher might actually be a better teacher for what this person wants to learn. So that's okay, but that's why we do the trial, so we can figure out these things. Another thing, this totally happens sometimes, not very often, but sometimes this happens where you do a trial, and at the end of the trial, like, you decide this family's a nightmare, and you don't want to work with them.
Yeah.
That happens. Doesn't happen very much at all, but that happens. One of our teachers recently did a trial with an older gentleman, and the entire time in the lessons, the older gentleman was saying all this like bigoted stuff and just very political in his lessons and stuff. And the teacher was like, yeah, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, can you just finish the trial at least? Because we signed a contract, let's at least finish that. And then at the end of that, if you want to tell the guy to move on, like, you can do that. So that's what ended up happening.
So they just got like kicked out, or?
Well, we don't use language like that. It was just like, he was like, you know, I think you might be better off maybe with another teacher.
Okay.
So it was something like that.
Yeah.
This rarely happens, but that's a situation where the teacher didn't feel comfortable working with the student. And so that happens too. And that's okay. Usually it's not a problem with the students that we have. Usually it's with the parents. If somebody's going to be a pain in the butt customer, it's usually the parents. It's not usually the kids. The kids are usually pretty easy. All right, so that's the trial. So after the trial, if everything's cool and everybody likes it and they want to sign up for something more, then we offer, under bullet point 3, membership options. We got the 12-month membership at $100 a month, the 8-month membership at $110 a month. And you don't necessarily have to write all that down because it's on the thing. Oh, okay. And then you got the 4-month membership at $120 per month. And so how do you know which way to steer the family towards? Well, first of all, I don't tell the family, and sometimes I tell them this. I said, look, I don't pressure you to pick one of these. Like, I want you to do what you feel like is comfortable with you, for you. But a word of advice that I do have is, a good way to think of it is, do you see your student doing this in a year? And everybody, like if it's a parent, they know their kid. If the student's an adult, they know themselves. And so it is really often that people sign up for the 12-month membership. But some people were like, well, I know my kid, he tends to quit things after 4 months. So let's just sign up for 4 months and see how that goes.
So if they do quit in the middle?
Well, that's why we have a contract, and there's
Contract,
penalties and stuff associated with that.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
That's a great question, though. So those are the options for private lessons. Is after that you sign up for 4, 8, or 12 months. And we've also put on here what you're saving per month, because we're not charging you per lesson, we're charging you a membership fee.
Mm-hmm.
So it covers whether there's 3 lessons in a month or 5 lessons in a month. And where I'm getting that from is sometimes there's a holiday, like on a Monday, or maybe it's on a Friday, or maybe spring break where the whole week is off. So sometimes there's holidays, so you lose a week. But then there's other weeks where maybe there's 5 Wednesdays in a month, just because how it works out in the calendar. So then there's 5 there. So over the course of a year, it pretty much works itself out. So there's a monthly membership rate that we charge, and it's already discounted. So we pretty much tell people there, well, we're already discounting this stuff. We know that things are going to be missed occasionally. So you're not losing out on anything. You're not paying for stuff you're not getting. Some parents have a hard time wrapping their brain around that, but that's a reality. We'll talk about makeup lessons and stuff in another conversation. Okay, so you also see on the rate sheet something called 2-person classes. The idea with this is like if you have siblings that want to do the same instrument, well, you can put them together in the same time. So per student, it's less money, but for the instructor, it's more money.
Okay.
So, like if somebody signs up for 12 months doing the 2-person thing, that's actually $75 per person. So it's actually $150 that's coming in.
Okay. So yeah, so it is better.
So you see how that's more money?
Yeah.
So you're multiplying your efforts. So, and another case where this is pretty common is if it's like 2 friends. You know, let's say you got 2 12-year-old kids, they want to play guitar, and they're friends. So like that's a good opportunity to do like a 2-lesson thing.
Right.
2-person class. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the amount of time and rates per month are according to that. Okay, group classes. This is sort of the same idea, but with group classes, it's like the number of students you have in the class is really more determined by how many the instructor feels like they can handle. Now, for me, being a drum instructor that's been doing this for a really long time, I can handle a large group pretty well. And there's a lot of things you consider, like do you have enough instruments? Can you manage the classroom and all the personalities that are in the classroom? Can you structure the time in the class in a way where everybody benefits from it? And a lot of these things come with experience, like as you gain experience in training. But for some instruments, it's more conducive to a larger group than others. Like for drumming, I can do a large group. Everybody can play on the floor, and then we can switch out on instruments when it's time for instruments. Mm-hmm. For guitar, maybe you only have 6 guitars. I mean, we have more than that, but let's say you only have 6 guitars. Well, you're kind of limited to maybe just 6 students unless you're having people share instruments, which is kind of a normal thing to do anyway. It's not unheard of to have 2 people per guitar if they don't own one themselves. That's kind of normal. Same thing with like keyboards and pianos. Vocal classes, that's very different. You don't necessarily need instruments for that. So, I mean, you could have 50 people in a class, like a choir or something, and that would work fine. And so the rates are less per person, but for the time, the income is greater.
Right.
So that means the instructor's making more money too. So let's say you have 10 people in a class, in a group class, and they all signed up for 12 months. It's just hypothetically. Mm-hmm. So if you get 10 people signed up for 12 months, they're paying $55 a month. Total revenue to the business is $550 for an hour of time. The instructor gets half of that, so that's $225 for 4 hours. So assuming that they meet for 4 weeks, like 1 hour a week.
Yeah.
And then if you do the math on that, ends up being something like close to $30 an hour when you're working. So the idea is per student they're paying less, but the instructor's making more. So that's how the rates work. Any questions about rates?
Nope. Pretty clear.
All right. So I'm going to pause this video and start a new video to talk about contracts.